Hey, I was debating whether to even do this or not. So in some ways, this is just having fun, I guess. Although I take it a lot more serious than that, obviously. But let me make a few suggestions or recommendations that really help a lot because I just experienced that and I know how it helped to cleanse my spirit, cleanse my soul, if you will. Helps clear a lot of the demonic stuff that's present. Um, and that is, if you understand who Pythagoras was, what are known as um, the mystical chants, okay, what are known as Gregorian chants, okay, there's a couple of great YouTube websites, YouTube channels actually. One is Patrick Lenk, Lenk. He has an enormous library there of some of the most beautiful, original tones, okay? We're talking about source tones, okay? This was before they changed and retuned to create distortion, okay, in the grid. I mentioned the 55 harmonic. That's why when I came in here, I realized that the music in this planet was distorted unless I'm with her. Okay, so anyway, the Gregorian chants, music of the mystics, okay, is a beautiful way to, how do I put it, cleanse a lot of the stuff that we experience and pick up because of the nature of, uh, how do I put this? When you venture from the spiritual world to come into the matter of the material world, particularly when you begin to realize the difference of what it might be like, for instance, if you decided to be a monk and you decided to go live up way up in the Himalayan mountains some place in Tibet or what have you, and spend your time with the cosmos, with the cosmic source from which all light and all love and living spirit come from, and spend your life doing Gregorian chants, you'd be surprised the difference between what it's like to experience heavenly sounds and heavenly music that soothes your soul and cleanses your spirit. And then when you venture out from being in like eternal harmony with your own soul and your own spirit, and then you come out into the material world, and as a result of that, you're able to gain sort of a different frame of reference of what it means to live in the spiritual world and then live in the matter world, if you will, the material world. And for me, it's always wanted to return to the retreat or to isolate yourself away from all of that because of the way that it is so insane. Okay, because it's it's real simple. When you begin to realize you are what spirit is, and your spirit is lifted up by the natural harmonics of the universe, which represent the chorus of Source and the gods and the goddesses, the real ones that are playing music to your ears, if you will, okay, to your spirit and your soul. You begin to realize the difference between the two, between the spiritual world, the purity of your spirit, the purity of your soul, the purity of your heart, which is the purity of your light, which is the purity of your unconditional love. Okay? When you get back and you're grounded to that with your spirit, then you begin to realize the relationship and the reason that we venture out into the material world. And why I've always used to call it coming back full circle, the circle of light, which is the spin of the Merkaba. That's why it's a circle of light, because it spins so fast. Two triangles, right? One that's up to a point and then the other one that's inverted the other way. And they spin together just like a six-pointed star, right? That's the Merkaba. And when it's spinning so fast, you simply see a circle of light because there's that much light within you that you are broadcasting as a result of having so much love in your heart, right? So the more love you have in your heart, the faster the spin of your Merkaba. And the more powerful those scalar broadcasts are pushing out to essentially transmute the lower frequency density demonic stuff that they throw at everybody through all of their communication systems. So I wanted to mention something because I saw something, an ad. Actually, it was on a YouTube channel called Blessed to Teach, B2T, sort of a Christian patriot site. Gene Decode comes on there every once in a while and shows what's happening down in all the dumps, the progress that's being made, et cetera, et cetera. And there was a little blurb in the show notes that talked about apparently the United States Postal Service has arrested a letter carrier, okay, that was caught dumping, as it turned out, I think it was 100 and some odd absentee ballots, along with 60 pieces of mail, some of which had election campaign stuff related to it. And I thought, and this was like in, I believe it was in Kentucky somewhere, as I remember it. And I thought, and so he's been picked up, he's been charged with a felony, okay? So this is the nature of the times that we live in, and I say that because I'm old enough to have remembered a time when something like that was very rare to have ever occurred within American society, because the vast majority of the people I grew up with as parents, mothers and fathers, as a mean, if you were going to take the mean out of the amount of people that were there, because you're sort of able to mathematically measure in your neighborhood, in a community, in a town, and throughout the state, at least I can do that, the amount of loss of gain in light. And so therefore, the more light that people are loving, which means the more love they have in their heart, the more truthful and honest they are. Okay? So that's why you can measure over time the differences in the amount of corruption that was taking place as a result of the communication technology, because I was aware of it at age 4, of programming. Programming lower frequency algorithms that distort the energy field. So when you're running a higher frequency speed with your Merkaba that's up around 528, 600, 700, 800 megahertz, you're naturally in a state of love and joy. So you don't have any reason to do something that represents lying, corruption, cheating, and all the rest of it. That means that the higher the frequency the people were experiencing within their own avatar or their own Merkaba, the chances are you could trust these people, which means they were honest. They lived in the truth. They don't want to do something that's a lie, okay, because they want to maintain the purity of their spirit, the purity of their soul, the purity of their light. So what you begin to see over several generations was the amount of lying went up, the amount of distrust went up, the amount of fear went up. In other words, everything was going the other way, which is a spiral going the other way, which means everything increased in terms of, it used to be you could get spring water that wasn't as contaminated. It means that the level of radiation wasn't as contaminated. It meant that the oxygen level on the planet was higher than what it is now, which means everything that you began to measure over 50 years worth of time went down. Everything went down. So it was pretty obvious when you measure it against the First Roman Empire, the collapse that it went into in 408 AD, defeated by the tribes, why Constantinople moved over to the east, which was known as the Eastern Roman Empire, was because of all the self-indulgence, corruption, lying, cheating, stealing, pornography, pedophilia, and everything that represents self-indulgence and perversion of nature. So sometimes I used to think, why did the white tribes of Europe sell these psychopathic maniacs the ability to go back into business again and continue to pillage and plunder the planet? Go figure, okay? Did you expect, a demon to do something different than what a demon does? Why didn't they get eradicated back then? Just completely wiped out, right? They were given a second shot at the apple. What did they do? What demons do. They did it in the Americas. Go figure, huh? So you saw what they did there in the Roman Empire. So they simply exported the Roman Empire through the Vatican back then, brought it here into the Americas, set up shop again, and continue to do the same thing they always do. Okay, and that's when Kennedy talked about it in 1962, as I remember, in what was known as the Great Society speech that I believe that he gave at the Washington Press Club, where he talked about a tightly knit group, essentially an infestation of locusts that are going to occupy every local, every state, every federal office, which means they're going to infiltrate every political system, all the institutions, whether it's the schools, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's fire, whether it's medical, in other words, every institution is going to be infiltrated and like an infestation of demons. Okay? They're everywhere. Okay? And programmed to be that. So when I see a young man who's a postal letter carrier doing something like that, am I surprised by that? No. They're everywhere. So when you sort of put this in the lens, what I call the hopper, when I say the hopper, I'm talking about my computer. In other words, number crunch the data. And what does the data tell you? You honestly believe you're going to be able to trust the numbers of the people that work in the institutions that are responsible for counting votes and all the rest of that? No. Okay? The system's completely corrupted. Okay? Completely. This isn't something that you can resurrect. Okay? And that's why she took the gloves off. It's over. So I don't know how you're going to be able to resurrect something that was completely infiltrated with that many demons. Okay? Which is why I remember I said to Patty one time, why don't we just remove all these characters out of here? We have the ability to do that, and we do. Okay? So I also realized and did another calculation. If we did something like that, you can imagine the emotional impact. Emotions are the most powerful energy in motion. And you can imagine the impact of all of a sudden 70% of the population of the planet all of a sudden disappeared just like that. Everything that we rely on to keep a system running, all of a sudden they disappear. Because most of the institutions that we have that keep things running every day, the railroad running, okay, the classrooms running, all the institutions upon which we rely upon to move electrons on the planet is being run by people that work in cubicles and people who supervise and run these corporations that are all demons. That's why Karen Ann Luke McDonald filed the papers with the International Criminal Court to completely pull the title and say the corporations are done. So what do you think the world's going to look like when all of a sudden all the major corporations that provide all the automobiles, build all the trains, build all the bridges? Think about all the corporations, exactly how much, what they actually represent. They're all parasites. Okay, they're the ones that are responsible for the destruction of a biosphere. Okay, and yet they are the bigger providers. When everybody still goes to Walmart, everybody still goes to Target, because they don't have enough money to go someplace else. They're stuck, huh? So all this has got to get run through the hopper, and this is sort of why, man, I'm out of here. I'm glad I'm leaving. I am not going to miss these parasites at all. So this is where it's important, as I mentioned before, as Patty said to us, this is a time when we all got to do the inner work, which is the cleansing of our own spirit, the cleansing of our own soul. Okay? Because look what happened here. Okay? They wrecked the planet. They wrecked the biosphere. Okay? So it's got to get restored or we move into a different hotel. Okay? In other words, a different dimension, a different density, okay, than this one. Okay? So that's the shift. That's where we're headed with her, see? So that means the cleansing of the soul, a cleansing of the spirit, and doing the inner work of the things that we got to reconcile within our own selves, which for me is looking in that mirror. And that becomes the soul of America, is looking at each other, not at each other, in our mirror, because that's what we are, or a bidirectional mirror. See? We're all living in a bidirectional mirror. See? So that's why I measure what it is that I do every day by how much love that I'm sharing with everybody that's around me, and the responsibility that I have to keep my energy up, to do as much as I possibly can while I'm still here, to try and shift the energies up and share with others how we do this stuff, which is actually quite simple. And I've tried to suggest a lot of exercises that work. Gregorian chants are extremely beneficial. To lie down and do some breathing exercises, which is what I do. Move your bodies in sort of a natural yoga sort of way. And the music, the Gregorian chants, will naturally move your spirit to be in harmony with the energy of the Gregorian chants. And it is one of the most uplifting and spiritual cleansing processes that we can do within ourselves, and why I recommend it, particularly now and particularly over the next few days. So anyway, I was going to leave you that with a night, and I was hesitating on whether I was going to say anything, simply because of the fact that I do not like to share anything generally that has any kind of potential risk of maintaining any kind of lower frequency fear-based stuff, even though I think it's pretty well understood at this point in time on which side of the vortex people are running, okay? Even though there's two, a black hole and a white hole, right? And the singularity in between both of those. So you have trinary, right? Duality and binary, and then there's trinary, which is 3, 6, 9. So I mention this because it's sort of, when you've gone through sort of a cleansing process with Gregorian chants, it feels good to clear all the junk that you pick up. And it's sort of like coming full circle again and realizing how beautiful it feels to cleanse your body from the stuff that we pick up as a result of what we're exposed to, because that's what it is. It's called exposure. The light is exposing all the dark. So now what's happening is they're being flushed out. That's one of the reasons why I was concerned to a certain degree, because for those that are sort of asleep, if you will, or just starting to wake up, and they're not really, their state of awareness is not running high speed, right? Which means their awareness is very up, and they're very aware that we're in what I call the final dance with demons, okay? And I know that because so many of them are getting flushed out, okay, they're looking for host vessels. And so naturally, for me, I know in places where to find them and where they hang out, looking for those. And those are in your, obviously, places where there's a lot of homeless people, okay, where people's state of vibration is way down. Those that are old and have a lot of sickness or illness, respiratory problems, where their energy is down, they become big targets. That was the whole purpose of COVID. Okay? Look what happened out of that. Okay? This wasn't about going after necessarily younger people or healthy and fit. This is about killing off of baby boomers and people who've suffered as a result of the illnesses, as a result of what happened here. Because they're the most vulnerable in our society. So that's why their numbers went up. So you can imagine, just like the way it was with me and other older people that I noticed that were forced to have to wear a mask, but because they're on Social Security, they don't have any other choice if they need to go to a doctor or get food to have to take a bus. Okay? And that's what upset me the most, was the fact that those that are the most vulnerable seniors, okay, were the ones that you could see were the ones that were dropping and suffering from all this. And you could see hundreds, if not thousands of people as if they could give a shit. Okay? That's how bad it is. Okay? And that is a measurement of what happened in this country over the last 60 years that I've been here to observe all this. okay? Which is why Trump threw the gauntlet down, which was Executive Order 13818, which is to end human rights abuses, okay? So anyway, I believe that the next several days, and even after that, when I realized, as I mentioned before, when all the light came in here with the Arcturians in here, and I know that there are a lot of ships that represent light forces, if you will, okay, that they didn't come in here to play tiddlywinks. And everything that I was shown, that Patty showed us and a few other people showed me, and of course I get communications on what's happening anyway through my own heart wheel, that this was not going to happen overnight. That when a planet is going to be purged of all its parasites, in other words, the colonies, just like a parasitic colony that's in your colon, it's a parasitic colony that's in our Merkaba, then you can imagine how many parasites are in her Merkaba. So she's purging all the parasites out of planet Earth. Okay? The same way we do it with a colon cleanse. So she's doing a cleanse. So we're here, and I'm aware that she's going to purge and cleanse herself of all this parasitic stuff. That's why everything is happening the way that it is. That's why she was moving the poles at the speed at which she was moving it. At first we thought she was going to do it slowly, and then it began to speed up a little bit, where the South Pole, because it was freed, where they had a shield up and they froze it using fresh water, which doesn't conduct electrons. And so the measurement that I got about a year and a half ago was the South Pole was moving at 47 miles an hour northbound, and the North Pole was moving at 56. And when both those poles reached the weakest point, that's a shift, that's a flip. That's why Patty and I and a couple other people were headed to north central Utah in order to build dome structures using ceramic concrete, because Patty had a design that would be able to withstand 600-mile-an-hour winds, along with huge tidal waves, because you're talking about a crustal displacement, okay, which is an indicator she's done, okay, which is the purpose of a ship, okay. However, as I mentioned before, when Patty mentioned to Karen and Karen mentioned to us on one of her videos that she did, that the Arcturians had stabilized the poles. Now, I haven't looked at the most recent data on where the poles are, but you can certainly keep an eye on the magnetosphere and see what's happening. Okay? But this much I do know. The world we just came out of, it's gone. We're not ever returning to that. Okay? So when the girl and the planet decides that it's over, it's over. So that's why getting our spiritual house in order is the most important thing that we can all do right now. Okay? So anyway, that's what I know. Okay? So anyway, have a good night. Be good to yourselves.